Welcome back to another episode of Alpha Access EverQuest Next Landmark. In today's episode, I'll be introducing you to a new technique similar to micro voxels called Anti Voxels. I'll show you how to get started creating them, as well as some tips on how to create Anti Voxel Strings for more intricate designs. Stay tuned. Hello everybody and welcome back. Today's episode is all about Anti Voxels. Now you're probably asking yourself, Strahz, what the hell is an Anti Voxel? And I literally just learned about this the other day thanks to my neighbor Noodlecat. If you haven't checked my previous video on clean micro voxels, I showed you an example of some of the stuff she's done at her claim with her floor designs, which look amazing. And she let me know that she did it mostly with Anti Voxels and inlaid patterns, so I quickly tried to look for some info as best I could on these Anti Voxels, and I found some good stuff. And I'll try to relay this to you as best I can, and I'm still learning, so bear with me. But real quick, let's just compare. And just let me check my inventory real quick. I don't want that bright shiny light there. There we go. So let's just quickly compare here. On my right is a micro voxel. This is a little design. You can see, if I zoom in, you can see that puckering we're getting. Where that micro voxel meets a normal voxel, you're going to get this puckering. And a lot of times you don't want that. Instead, you can make an anti voxel. And you can look here, this behaves and acts almost like a normal voxel and is perfectly smooth. And it butts right up against regular voxels and behaves normally with them. So it's got a bit of an edge up, like I said. And I've almost completely switched over to Anti Voxels and doing these really micro detail type things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly show you guys how to make this stuff. Now this is pretty much a beginner's tutorial, so I'm going to go pretty slow here. I'm going to try to go as clear as I can because I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. I couldn't write this down on paper and explain to you exactly how this works. All I know is that it works. Okay, so the first step here is to make a 5x5x5 voxel cube with the middle hollowed out. So I'm going to go ahead and make that now. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is delete the voxels in the middle. Your second step here is going to take your selection tool. I'm going to select the entire thing, and then we're going to smooth it down a few times. Now right now the magic number is 5, and of course feel free to experiment because you can get different shapes with this. And of course the smooth tool might change in the future, so just bear that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do it 5 times. I've tried 4. 4 works pretty well too. I'm going to go ahead and do it 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And I'm going to take my selection tool and I'm going to, just like the inlaid patterns idea, I'm going to go ahead and select the middle slice, that is the smoothest. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it. I'm going to put it right here. Now, it may be a little difficult to see, but you can see this super tiny micro voxel is pretty much a hole right here in the middle. And that's basically what an anti-voxel is. And there's all sorts of tricks we can do with this. So now that we've got this shape, let's go ahead and see what we can do with it. Alright, now that we've got our micro voxel design inlaid here in this little cube here. You can see it there. Hopefully you guys can see that. Things you can start doing now with this is you can start coming in with one voxel and start adding stuff, and you see the designs you start getting. You can take a look here. It looks like some sort of inverted pyramid here. And you don't have to use the add tool. You can also use the subtract tool. So if I go ahead and subtract here, you can see you start getting some really cool designs that you can start pasting around on your walls for decoration or what have you. We go over here like this, we can get stuff like that. A little bow tie action. And this design here, this is basically what I use to make these designs over here. I was just using different patterns here to try to figure out what I could get with different shapes, and then I started extruding a couple of them. It does get a little funky on the back side, but you keep these guys at one voxel depth and then put them in the wall, then they can look pretty cool. That's basically how I made those, and of course I came over with my paint tool and selected certain areas and just chose a different material. And they actually paint pretty well. That's probably the most basic use of the Anti Voxels, is being able to make designs like this, but there's so much more we can do with that. So instead of making these negative sort of 2D shapes, these stencils, we can make things like this, which I showed earlier on the wall, that are nice and flush. There's all sorts of different designs we can do with this. You're not stuck with these sort of default square, triangle type shapes. You can get some really funky results. So why don't I go ahead here and show you how I made this triangle piece. It's not too bad. There's a couple more steps involved, but it's honestly not too bad. Once you practice it a few times, you'll definitely get the hang of it. Okay, so we're back to our original Anti Voxel default size here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my add tool, and I'm going to show you how I made this shape over here. It's pretty easy. All I did was come in with my add tool and go to the 4 corners. You can see I have that shape in there now, same as this one over here. Then I just went with my delete tool and got rid of these guys. Once that was done, I ended up making this shape here. What this technique is, at least from what I'm hearing it's called now, is Anti Voxel Strings. And how you can make things like this. You guys can see that. That's pretty much a string right there, a default string. And then I just copy and pasted to make it like a panel. And same idea with this guy. I just got this inverted triangle pyramid shape and then just copy and pasted and had it extrude out like this. And I also did a different shape down here, which pretty funky looking, but you definitely get a different type of design. I definitely encourage you to experiment with this once I show you how to get the initial designs across. So let's get back to that real quick. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I've come up with a design I'm pretty happy with, I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. I'll try to bring this closer to you guys so you guys can see it pretty well. What I want to do now is basically fill in this hole. This is very similar to the inlaid pattern idea I showed probably about a week or so ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area in the middle, and I'm going to bring in my add tool. I'm just going to fill it in real quick. What I basically want now is to take my Anti Voxel design that I'm happy with, and I'm going to paste this in front of this guy and one behind it. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I'm gonna go into tweak mode to make sure we get this nice and lined up. All right, that looks pretty flush. So I'm gonna come out one in front. That looks good. And then we want to go one behind. And I'll go back to tweak mode. Yep, just off a little bit. Let's see, does that look good? Nope, we got to go one more. There we go. Okay, so we basically got this design here. Oops, sorry, this one here. So now what you want to do is you basically want to select the middle voxel in between all of this right here. So what I found the easiest way to do this is I just clicked on the outside. Clicked once, make sure it was one voxel in size. And then held down shift and just dragged it over 2 spots to make sure it's right in the middle. And that looks pretty snug in there. So now that we've got that, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. Usually the first time you paste it's going to look like a square. But if you shift tab to rotate, you can now see we've got that inverted triangle, or excuse me, pyramid. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to extrude it out so you guys can see the difference here. So there you go. That's basically Anti Voxel Strings in a nutshell. Now the default shape, as I mentioned earlier, is this guy here. Really thin bars. And how to get that shape is to come back to your original Anti Voxel design and not do any of the add or subtraction in the front or in the sides here. This will basically lead to this design. So I laid these out here for you guys. You can kind of see the design. So this one was adding 4 voxels on all the corners. This one down here, I just had the bottom 2. And of course, you can come up with all kinds of stuff. I'll also show you really quick, when you paste these guys next to regular voxels, you can see how well they behave. So I want to make this nice and flush. I'm going to rotate it so we can see it. There we go. Ah, there it is. I'm going to go ahead and paste it now. And you can see how we don't get any of that puckering like we do over here with the micro voxels. So in a lot of ways, it's more convenient to have these guys around. You don't get this puckering. And of course, in the last video, I showed you how to make clean micro voxels. You don't have to worry about making a tiny micro voxel floor or ceiling to try to get things to be nice and flush. Now you can just take your normal Vox building tools and add these guys. And what I highly recommend doing is making a bunch of these templates of these guys, experimenting with different shapes, and just putting them somewhere on your claim within easy reach so that you can quickly copy and paste and start doing some crazy designs and stuff like that. Alright folks, that about does it for this episode. I'd like to thank my neighbor Noodlecat for pointing me in the right direction to this anti-voxel idea. I'll leave a couple links in the video description below on where this idea came from. There's also another video series on YouTube. I'll leave the links to that as well. Those are some shorter videos and they go into a little bit more depth on each one of the designs I covered here, and there's a couple more as well. So feel free to check those out. And as always folks, if you enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe. And if you've got a question, feel free to drop one in the comment sections below. I'd be happy to get back to you. Until next time folks, take care.